let's get to the Washington Wizards, who this is, they're all sorts of all over the place, but they're key free agents as of now. Kristaps Porzingis is a player option. He has until June 21st, so the Wednesday, which is the day after this will be released, to pick it up or decide not to. Kyle Kuzma is a player option that he will certainly decline. Denny Avdia is their only key extension eligible candidate. Their cap situation is basically all over the place right now. They've shed some money, and so I think that their tax concerns for this year are fairly low. If they want to access the bigger MLE, though, they're going to need to let people walk or cut salary via trade. They're still a mini MLE team, though, in my book. No notable trade exceptions. Their biggest need, I had it when I filled it out before the trade, a direction, a full-on reset. It is underway. And so now it's just draft equity, talent accumulation, because and I focused a lot on the Phoenix end of the trade on the solo pod. So it's probably good that like the Wizards are ending up here. But like their starting point is almost zero, because his Denny Avdia is not the future. He could be good, but I don't know if they're going to want to pay his next deal. And he's not Michael Winger's guy. Johnny Davis, Corey Kispert, you don't have any extra firsts at the moment. You have swaps from Phoenix, excuse me. Maybe the 2026 one can convey. You have the number 8 pick. It's basically that's what you're starting from, is now you have the number 8 pick and the promise of flexibility moving forward. So I think it becomes mission critical to figure out how to capitalize on the inevitable departures of Porzingis and Kuzma. And how do you do that? With Porzingis I feel like it could be an opt-in in trade, just because he can extend immediately for 105% of his number. And like, I don't even think he's going to get a raise off of his current number. So that makes him a good candidate. And then Kuzma is trickier. And so I'm just curious where you're on that, because he could just leave, and sign and trades are harder to broker. Would you consider bringing him back with the intention of moving him later? Or does that risk what it is to keep him? You're probably paying him a little too much for that to be a net positive asset.
Yeah, I think having Beal off the books, and presumably Chris Paul will never, he'll be off the books too, one way or the other, before the season starts, makes me feel better about, just as long as it's not, I don't know what the number needs to be, but preserving the asset by re-signing Kuzma after he opts out. I think you highlighted it is dangerous, because it seems like, well, I don't know if that's fair. It seems like he may want to leave, and so you're going to have to pay a little extra to beat the market and bring a guy back who, I think if he has any sense, would know that he's being brought back to be traded, most likely, because there's just no place for a mid-career forward making $27 million a year, 25. Like, is that what it would take to bring him back? I wouldn't pay that, but
20 plus, I would think, right?
20 plus. Sure. Like, I mean, at $20 million, I think there's a chance you could trade Kuzma for positive value. So yeah, I think I'd feel okay about that, because like you said, there just aren't a lot of other ways for them to add talent other than just like waiting for the draft to roll around and losing enough games so where your picks are valuable. So I want to talk about Porzingis too, because thinking about like what he should do just from his standpoint, I wrote something on this earlier this offseason. I think opting in is really dangerous, because you open yourself up to just getting traded someplace that you don't want to be, So I guess there are upsides to that, in that theoretically the team trading for him would have an eye towards re-signing him, and you might even know like what that dollar figure would be. But I thought it made more sense for him to just enter free agency and just see what's out there, because he's not going to have a lot of control over the process if he comes back on his player option. So I don't know how you feel about Porzingis specifically, but he's someone I think on an expiring deal that you could, I mean, there are more and more teams. He makes sense for more and more teams after putting together a pretty healthy season. That was like basically the best of his career to this point.
Oh yeah. He was hitting fallaways and doing stuff off the dribble in addition to his 3-point shooting and rim protection. But he still has control over the process if it's an opt-in trade. You just like, that's just something that through the grapevine, because there's no such thing as tampering, but like, it's tough because the guarantee date it's going to, maybe by the time people are listening to this, it will have come and passed. And so maybe he opts out. I think opting out is the bigger risk, because you control the process. Who's paying him? Who's giving him let's say 4 years and $120 million. So you're lowering your average annual rate and you're just guaranteeing yourself more of the long haul. Maybe Houston. Utah's not going to be in that business, I don't think. I'm looking at cap space teams. I saw Bobby Marks float Kristaps Porzingis in Indiana. I don't love that idea. That
Charlotte?
would be collectively though. Miles Turner and Kristaps Porzingis would be 14 plus feet worth of below average rebounding, which is kind of impressive.
Yeah,
Charlotte needs to get to cap space then, though. So you're getting into the sign and trade scenarios. It's actually easier, I would argue, to just work with this $36 million number. The team that acquires you, if they're going to give up stuff, they're going to want to extend you, and you could sign the same deal. You could go, so you could only do 3 years. You can't sign a full forward one. But if you get an extension or you get traded, you could sign a 3-year, $90 million contract extension.
So if you're Washington and knowing what you need or what you want in terms of your targets, where does it make the most sense to trade Porzingis following an opt-in? Like, is there, because I mean, he fits, like every team wants the floor stretching shot blocker at center. Like that's a universal fit. Are we talking about a sign and trade to New Orleans? Are we talking about, where else would he make sense? I don't know.
Portland,
maybe. I don't know who they're, I guess, are they giving up Nurkic? And yeah, I don't know. You made me rethink though. My Porzingis should opt out, but only.
You could also can you use Porzingis to move up? And is this enough to get the Blazers to drop from number 3 to 8? You take back Nurkic, you would take back Matisse Thybulle or Cam Reddish in a sign and trade. You take back, that's how you get to the number for Porzingis.
Mm-hmm.
And look, as we're recording this, Kyle Kuzma has declined his $13 million player option. That is totally predictable. So you send Nurkic, Thybulle, number 3. And I'm assuming that gets to the salary needed. And if it doesn't, you have Nasir Little that you can move. You send that to Washington for number 8, Porzingis, and Denny Avdia.
Ooh, Avdia got my interest up because I know you said he's not going to be the guy you build around, but I think we both really like, or I still really like Avdia.
So essentially getting off of Nurk's money while getting Porzingis, Avdia, and number 8. Is that enough to move?
I think that might be pretty close. If I'm Portland, I don't think I'd do that if Scoot is there.
That was my thought. I'm like, no, not if Scoot's there.
Yeah, which he probably will be unless this is all. I guess we've skipped the Charlotte part already, but they had both him and Miller back to work out again, and apparently Scoot was just better. Which no shit. So I don't know. I don't think I think Scoot might be there, and so I don't know if that would give me the most pause of all the variables in that transaction, which is a good one because Porzingis would really make Portland's offense interesting if he's healthy, and I think he'd probably be a defensive upgrade too over Nurkic.
Jeremy Grant on the front line too. That's legit. I mean, that's also a front line that's not going to rebound too much though.
No. What else you want to hit with Washington here? Like their targets are all just like, don't you want to win 0 games this year? Isn't that the plan? So it
right. I'm like, can you look at, I don't like it's draft equity. And so it's, can you get is Porzingis or Kyle Kuzma in a prospective sign and trade? Can they get you any young players from other teams? And it's, I don't know. Indy has made the number 7 pick available, but you're not getting that for a Kyle Kuzma sign and trade. And they can sign Kyle Kuzma outright. A lot of people have mentioned Porzingis as someone for the Knicks. Knicks fans are very high on the idea, which surprised me a little bit. Can you get Quentin Grimes out of that deal? That's the kind of, and even the Portland thing, you got draft equity. And so it's, can you send Porzingis somewhere where even if you're taking back bad money, let's use San Antonio with Wemby. Would they give you anything, a lower end first, in addition to Keldon Johnson to that? Is that too much for Porzingis? I'd be very curious to see, but they don't have, what's interesting is that you can move Monte Morris and DeLon Wright, both of whom are going to the final year of their deals. None of those guys are worth a first round pick. I think the player with the most interesting trade value, because when it's Kyle Kuzma sign and trade, he has leverage. I think even with Porzingis, there's just the numbers so big that you're kind of just at the end. His position, it's he's a center. I don't want to see him playing with another big.
No,
I guess you could try and get away with him with Bam if you wanted to in Miami, but I don't want to see him play with another big. Denny Avdia is, what can you get? You could look at extending him. I don't know what the number is, but what is a team willing to give you a first round pick to have the right to extend or re-sign Denny Avdia in restricted free agency? That's your needs. And I don't even think we don't need to focus on names. I would just say, and we haven't really gotten your thoughts on the Beal trade, so maybe you can give us that quickly. I would just say that the trade was bad, like just objectively the value. And the process that led the Wizards there was catastrophic. Them making this call, because it's not on this front office, that it's on Ted Leonsis that they got here. It's not on Michael Winger and co. Making this decision has actual value. It's overdue, right, but it's finally been made. And yes, the process is going to be longer and probably more arduous, but you're beginning it. And I think that's what matters most here. And it also proves, and now I'll throw it to you, I swear, that this front office has autonomy to make these decisions.
Yeah, I don't think my thoughts will diverge much from yours or be surprising about the Beal trade. I think it's frustrating that I don't think the Phoenix package was the best that was on the table that they could have gotten, but the no trade clause, and you said it, like the Wizards just put themselves in this position. So they just didn't have any power, any agency, any control over this process. So the best thing they did was just doing it, right? Like it almost doesn't matter. And they didn't take on any crippling money, which is hard to do when you're trading the worst contract in the league.
One player on guaranteed money after next season.
Right. So, I mean, if it's just, let's undo this decision we made, success, right? Like that's fine. And it does give me confidence that this now is a franchise that's going to operate rationally and just build like so many other success, the Thunder, the Jazz, whatever, have done. And that's just the right thing to do. It's just like, this is going to be a long road because you didn't get the 4 first rounders or whatever, right, for Beal, or even the 2 or 3 you could have gotten had you traded him 2-3 years ago. So it's going to suck. But I wonder how Washington fans feel about it. I suspect that generally they get it. Like this needed to happen and it's okay.
They're probably just exasperated that it reached this point. And it was just eminently predictable that we saw this 3 or 4 years ago. The thing that they have going for them, and then you could take us out, I think when they have a bunch of cap space next year, unless they do something in their books that's funky this year, the value of that, with more of the penalties kicking in for these teams that are going to be not just crossing the second apron, but the first apron, there might be real compensation available if you're leasing out cap space. That's
a great point. The cap space, I feel like had sort of become less valuable, generally speaking, lately. I think that's going to change.
It still is in free agency, I would argue. It's really not that valuable. But on the trade market, I think it became more valuable.
The teams that can take on bad money with picks attached. So that's how you fast track this if you're Washington, is you eat a couple really bad deals for a couple years. Hopefully they don't extend, too far, and you're back flush with picks. Although I think picks are probably going to be viewed as more valuable now too, because that's a way to have cost controlled young players on your team. So we'll see.